of fighting against crime and fighting against terrorism, and itself became a threat to civil freedom and some kind of civil liberties we take profit for, but also killed the European Parliament's report on Echelon, because it was under the dust of the terrorist attack of 9/11. And that's why now, when we are speaking about PRISM, I have a feeling of déjà vu. Everything it was already debated at the time. I think there are some kind of differences. The biggest difference, in my opinion, is the level of technology, and I can understand why the last speaker told us 2 hours ago, Echelon was kids' play compared to PRISM. He's speaking about the capability of intercepting communications and the kind of data, especially the metadata he spoke about. So I think it's the main issues I would like to raise. On behalf of Mrs. Invelt, I would invite Mr. Campbell to help us again. Thank you so much.
Chairman, Chairman and colleagues, I think it is indeed hugely ironic that, in my recollection, it is precisely 12 years to the day, the 5th of September 2001, that 44 recommendations in the report prepared by Gerhard Schmidt and adopted unanimously, as I recall, by the Parliament, were passed. And it is indeed the tragedy and perhaps the lasting legacy after the vile effects of the attacks in Washington and New York that the terrorists managed to do so much harm to our civil liberties and our concerns for our own civil rights by their actions. But the years even before 9/11 saw confirmations even before what we have learned from Edward Snowden. The decade since has seen the admission of the UK-USA agreement between the United Kingdom's GCHQ and the United States National Security Agency and the 3 other English-speaking partners. And we can go on to some wider agreements that are now revealed or about to be revealed. Even in the year we were reporting, it was discovered that the United Kingdom had built an interception facility in the northwest of England to track all of the communications, again, this totality, not just the metadata, but all of the voice and other communications, by means of building a tower, and you see the tower there, to collect the radio waves behind opaque panels and below that 8 floors of high-capacity processing equipment. In some ways, the Echelon system was easier to track down and prove because it created highly visible artifacts, things that you could see, satellite tracking stations and towers like this, compared to the situation now. This is the GCHQ Bude station, which is now Remote Processing Center 1 for the collection of all the internet communications that they can get, to hold them for 3 days. Originally, the satellite dishes were fairly obvious, pointed up at the satellites as part of the Echelon system, but you also see in the upper top corner new buildings which were added for the Project Tempora that Snowden has revealed and we have heard so much about. But in the mid-noughties, there was also revelations that told us something of what was to come from the United States, when an American technician provided plans and documents and pictures showing how optical fibers were being spliced into the internet exchanges of the American West Coast. Many of us then started looking for secret rooms like these rooms around other exchanges in the world to try and document it, but it was in fact not until 2008 that one journalist in Britain learnt of what is now called the Mastering the Internet Project, a very strong and powerful name, and which has turned out to have been spawned into Project Tempora, with numerous other stations now being linked in. The Echelon system itself is not only still in being, but it has got bigger, and it's changed its name. There's the name. They just call it FawnSat now. That's one of Edward Snowden's slides. It was published in Brazil a month or so ago, and that's a map of all the Echelon stations around the world, possibly a year or two out of date, because it shows one in Germany that I believe now has closed, but it reveals that there are news stations in India, in Thailand, in Kenya, in Brazil, all part of the same collection system and run either by the United Kingdom or the United States and its allies. There's also a station in Oman covering the Middle East. So the number of systems in this single part of the communications collection network has gone up, but it's only a tiny part. And now we know how tiny Echelon was compared to what was really coming through the technical development as this Parliament met and reached its conclusion in that fateful year of 2001. Whoops. Oh, no. Sorry. Malfunction here. There's an example now confirmed. It's come off Snowden's map, but you will find the very same station in Japan, an Echelon station, on the back cover of the Interception Capabilities 2000 report. This is the Echelon report which I did for the committee and which Mr. Schmidt and then looked into, validated, and leading to the conclusions. More stations in the United States. But what is perhaps most interesting to understand is the collection of the different inputs that we now see being integrated together into a total internet usage analysis system that basically spans the planet. This is the system that's already been mentioned by Jake Applebaum and briefly alluded to by others, called X-key score or cross-key score. It produces a familiar kind of data for people who work in the forensics of computers, as I now do, because I had a sort of second career launched after working on Echelon here. But it covers everything, not just one computer, but everybody's computer. The inputs to this system are threefold, as you can see at the bottom. They're in obscure code. One of them, of course, is FawnSat, which we've just seen as the new name for Echelon and the satellites that collect commercial communications. The third one, on the right-hand side, SSO, is Special Source Operations, and this is the standard name that the agencies now use for access to commercial cables, optical fiber cables, and sometimes internet or telephone switches by reason of secret or coerced agreements with telecommunications companies. And the third input, and this is quite an interesting revolution, it's down there as F6, which is just a division of the National Security Agency, but it's a division also known as the Special Collections Service, and that service runs interception centers in United States embassies and diplomatic premises around the globe, some 75 or 80 sites, according to different documents. The critical input, though, for this system is to get access to the optical fiber cables, the submarine cables that connect and carry out most of the world's business and commerce. Everything goes that way now. Echelon, covering satellites, is now the minor player. And as we've learned from the Snowden revelations, the United Kingdom has taken a particularly strong role in simply scooping up all of the Internet, or attempting to do so. The news is that they haven't yet got everybody to take part in this operation. So as of about 2010, only 18 or so of the major submarine cables coming into the United Kingdom were being intercepted and passed into the interception system. Some commercial companies may have held out or may not have been compromised as yet, but the system that has been adopted at the remote processing center is either to connect from the cable termination points, and you can see there where Bude is in the southwest of England, so either with the consent of the companies, the cables are intercepted and an additional optical fiber link is taken to the processing centers at Bude or at Cheltenham, or without the consent or knowledge, secret taps are inserted in companies which aren't playing ball, which aren't playing the game, and to use the language of the industry, are backhauled into the interception centers. And there's a surprise for this Parliament and this Union because a new organisation has joined the Five Eyes in providing major interception arrangements and is deemed, according to the documents, to be the biggest collaborating partner of GCHQ outside the English-speaking countries. And it's Sweden, where the Försvarsradioanstalt has run satellite interception facilities for many years and has also passed new internet laws to enable access to the submarine cables. That is one of FRA's satellite interception stations, a place called Lerkel, near Göteborg, and I apologize to Swedish speakers if I am making a dreadful job of my pronunciation. The importance to the UQSA or Five Eyes organization of a Swedish participant, of course, is that they have access to cables that nobody else can get. So the global surveillance system, if not curtailed, is spreading through the EU with the participation not only of my country, the United Kingdom, but with the very active and collaborative participation of a second member state, Sweden. And the arrangements for cooperation seem to be extremely varied, and that is a point that perhaps might be noted by national representatives. So the secret code names are used within the system to hide the participants in the United States and United Kingdom. And when a cable is tapped or an internet or telephony switch is made the subject of interception, it is usually given its own ultra-secret code name and designated as a SIGINT activity, much like bases that you can actually see. The cross-key score slide is an eye-opener because it relates to a complete planet-wide internet surveillance system, where, as has been suggested by earlier speakers, you simply sit at your analyst's console, plug in the selectors, that is now the technical term, replacing what we called the dictionary at the time of the echelon work, and that is able to bring up all the traffic, all the thing that's been harvested for analysis. So this is another collection center extending the global reach in the Red Sea area, and again there's another echelon station there allied to it, to which the capacity has been added. The in-city type of collection, the F6 or Special Collection Service, is done from, most commonly, United States Embassy premises. And it's done rather similarly to that tower that was discovered in 1999 in the north of England, with opaque panels mounted high up and containing the radio interception equipment behind it. This, the presence of towers like this within the United States premises in Geneva have always been very obvious and passing by, and if you look closely you can see just how a rather odd structure with opaque panels is stuck at the top of the premises. I've heard it suggested, I don't know if it's correct, that in fact Edward Snowden was actually employed in this interception facility a few years earlier. Similar facilities are observable in Nicosia and Cyprus, and just for the sake of balance, the same is also true of the Russian Federation Embassy. Everybody's at it everywhere. The United States Embassy in Brussels, which we can almost see, at least from this podium, looks innocuous enough from its frontage, but take a look from above and you find superstructure added, which one could almost be looking at it now and it could be listening to us. So you have in all of that a huge integrated capacity feeding into the collection systems and the analysts. It's put together so that where we thought we just had one major system when we looked at this in 1999 to 2001, there were now 5 overlapping systems that can collect simultaneously. Collecting on the intercepted cables upstream, collecting from satellites if it goes by that, collecting from what's called deep packet inspection inside exchanges, using the, to call it plain language term, hacking or tactical access to compromised computers and networks, also known as computer network exploitation, or CNE. And at the end of this story of many ways of getting at our data and our company's data and our government's data, is PRISM, the system that is forced onto United States Internet service providers to create databases to be accessed by law enforcement agencies. For those who have had the time or the interest to look in depth at the diagrams that have been provided and published, say in the Washington Post as part of Snowden's revelations, would see that in fact PRISM isn't even run by the NSA, but is an FBI collection effort to which the NSA, along with CIA, FBI and others, are merely customers or clients. Not everything that we might want to know or suspect is out there seems to be in Mr. Snowden's papers, or if it is, it's not out yet. Little or nothing has been published about whether satellites are impactful on our civil and commercial communications now, although it's well established that signals intelligence satellites operating at geostationary orbit have a very, very close look at what can happen on the Earth's surface and can fill in gaps that can't be collected in other ways. It's also notable that the US government has claimed, somewhat strangely, that, well, we haven't lost all our secrets because what they call ECI, or extremely compartmented intelligence, has not been lost, or so they say. What has happened in the 12 years is that the risks and damage have been hugely exacerbated by the growth of massive collection and storage systems. Some of the ways that are clearly powerful to use and analyze and therefore bring the impact on civil society of this data haven't been well understood by people like those on the platform who are outside the intelligence community. It's perfectly clear now, as was just said, that network analysis using the metadata of who calls who and the degrees of separation between people has become a map into the existence and socialization and connection of the whole of humanity. Effects, frankly, unknown. It is breathtaking, the audacity of the GCHQ Mastering the Internet project to seek authority for, justification for, and simply to collect everything and to store it, basically, once selected, forever. The scale of computer hacking, deliberate intervention into networks and computers, has long since been suspected, but is new as to its scale. So, the problems that then confront us on a fundamental level, also alluded to. The United States Constitution and its Bill of Rights, fantastic document, and especially the Fourth Amendment, has been carefully interpreted since the time of the Church Committee to say that human rights belong only to the citizens of the United States. And so the whole power of the apparatus that we've been talking about is untrammeled when it's directed towards us as European citizens. No constraints, no limits. Marvelous, quite effective, quite serious constraints, but seem to have failed in respect of those who are American citizens and who are sensible enough to communicate only in the United States. United States NGOs, along with the government organizations, have been slow to recognize the importance of universal human rights. We're all signed up to it. Well, most countries are in the Charter of Human Rights, in the Declaration. The United States was invited by your committee to consider signing the additional protocol to the Charter on Political Rights and did not do so. We're also seeing and have heard here how information in France, there are attempts in the United Kingdom, in the United States, from these pervasive surveillance systems is being laundered into the law enforcement process. Now, for all its failures, law enforcement is a system of open checks and balances that tries to get it right according to our established norms. Its infiltration by information from selectively fed from secret, pervasive surveillance systems must be a major threat to the integrity of justice and the proper functioning of the criminal law. And the most stunning aspect of this, to my mind, is when you look back. Echelon began in 1968, in fact, was brought out of the closet in 1988 by myself, and then put back in the closet until the Parliament took an interest 10, 12 years later. But at that time, computers were utterly primitive. They had valves. If anybody remembers what a valve was. They ran a system called the dictionary, which was quite prominent in our studies 10 years ago, but is now as utterly irrelevant as looking up a manual dictionary would be to conducting a search on Google, which we all do all of the time. But the most stunning thing of all is that the justification for the automatic collection of everything without prior suspicion or prior cause is being justified by the work being done by automated or robotic processes. So a new concept seems to have come in through the march of technology, that somehow or other it's safe to assign the surveillance and selection of information about our private lives to robots programmed by humans, working with the much laxer controls that are imposed on metadata, communications data, in place of human agents. That is new in human history and is an ideological and sociological thing that I think many of us are trying to grapple with in the months ahead, no doubt here and in the United Kingdom. My final remark about checks and balances would be this, because we're not going to, I suspect, persuade them to undo all these optical fiber taps. And there will be those cases in an imperfect society where it has helped deal with terrorism, as well as acknowledgements that it has undermined civil liberties. But if one thing has been demonstrated in the last 3 months, it is that checks and balances and bringing the public to knowledge of what is going on is the most important thing that can be done for democratic societies. And the best thing that Europe could do, in my suggestion, would be to give sanctuary to Edward Snowden as the whistleblower who has given us so much knowledge, insight and understanding. Thank you.